Welcome to Heroes Have Wings, the podcast that gives a voice to the unsung heroes of Army aviation. I'm your host, Jason Santiago. For the Army aviators, crew chiefs, and flight medics who put it all on the line in the heat of battle, this is their opportunity to share untold stories of courage, sacrifice, and unbreakable will. From their beginnings to the battlefield, you hear about their hardships, the moments of doubt, and how they overcame impossible odds to save lives. These warriors didn't just fight for survival, they put others above themselves, embodying the true spirit of heroism and selfless service. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Heroes Have Wings. From a tiny town in Kansas to the front lines of global conflict, Joie Bier shattered every expectation placed in front of her. She didn't just join the Army, she kicked down doors in a male-dominated world, rising from an Apache Helicopter Crewchief to a combat company commander with 22 years of service under her belt. When life tried to box her in, she redefined the standard. She led jump FARPs in Afghanistan, taught recruits how to use wrenches and to survive, and showed the next generation what real leadership looks like. Joie isn't just a soldier, she's a force, and behind the strength is a woman who faced loss, adversity, and the crushing pressure of command, but never stopped showing up. She's proof that you can be battle-hardened and still lead with heart. This is courage, this is clarity, this is Joie Bier. Welcome to Heroes Have Wings.
Thank you, Jason, for having me. I appreciate it. It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been quite a while. How you been?
Just surviving, working, keeping Urban straight.
Are you surviving or are you thriving? Which one is it?
I'm actually surviving and thriving.
There you go.
Surviving.
And for the audience, I want everybody to know this is Irvin Bear's wife, Joie, and we're not going to identify her as that because she has her own story and legacy of its own, but she's the first spouse we've had on the show. So I'm going to be asking you questions about how you dealt with your husband being gone and things like that, and how the girls handled it. So we're going to get a different aspect and a different look on things. I won't try to keep you all day, but I'm going to keep you a little while, all right?
Okay, I'm here.
That's a good thing, though. All right, so let's get started. Quick hits, all right? Coffee, energy drinks.
Coffee.
City life, country living.
In between.
Summer heat, winter cold.
Summer heat.
Movies or books?
Movies.
Dog person, cat person?
Cat all day long.
Really?
My baby's right there. That's late.
You're probably one of the first cat people we've had on, so it's good. Beach vacation, mountain retreat?
Beach vacation.
Wake up early, stay up late?
Stay up late.
Action movies or comedies?
I like a good action movie.
Camping or road trip?
Road trip.
Texting or calling?
Calling.
You guys don't do road trips, by the way.
No, I don't do road trips, by the way.
You guys literally have a plane in your backyards.
Sure do. Just got back from Savannah.
I was telling Irv that he's coming to see me next month. I was telling him, like, man, I'm trying to get my life like you guys. You and Joey got a plane in the back. Go wherever you want to go, whenever the hell you feel like going. Man, that's a good life. You guys live a good life.
You're always welcome to come visit and take you to lunch wherever you want to go.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up on you guys. I'm gonna have to take a commercial plane. I don't fly fixed wing yet, but I'm gonna get into it. So we'll get there.
Irvin will get you there.
Say again.
Irvin will get you there. You know that.
Him, Justin, Matt, all those guys are trying to get me. I got another buddy named Bob. They're all trying to get me to fly again. So I'm gonna consider it. All right, so let's get started. Okay. Born and raised. What was that like?
Just like most everybody, it's very, very a tiny town. My hometown was 1,200 people.
Wow.
No stoplights. No
stoplights.
No four-ways. The main road at the time, growing up, used to go through my hometown. The main road was called 69 Highway, so it ran north and south from parts of Texas all the way straight up through Oklahoma and Kansas. And then shortly after, like my high school, junior high school time, the late 80s, they moved the main highway outside. So my hometown started, dwindling, not getting a lot of the traffic anymore, but it was very, very small. We cruised, the main drag was just the main street around the bank. But,
Your parents, were they together the whole time growing
they
up?
were. They were. I have a very young mom. She had me when she was 16 and shortly after she turned 17. So the wedding picture is with them and she was pregnant with me.
Wow. Are
Yeah.
they're still together now, obviously, right?
Yeah, they're still together, yes.
How was their relationship?
I've always thought my parents' relationship was a great relationship. I always saw them holding hands. They always went dancing. They were very, very loving towards each other,
How
which
did
I
that
was
help
happy
you?
to.
How did that help you once you got married? Seeing all that love.
Um, yeah, man, to make sure it was with the right partner. Really, it comes down to the right partner. Um, I'm a very loving person and I want the same affection, but sometimes, you meet a partner that's not that because you don't know their full background, their full history. And so it could be a lot of trials, but in the end of the day, you'll find that one that works well for you.
Yeah, they say that the one of the most important decisions you'll ever make in your life is your partner.
Oh, yes.
That is so true. I mean, now that we're older now, and I look back, I'm like, man, that's a very true statement.
And sometimes it's great to listen to other people, because obviously Urban's not my first. He's my second husband. And the first one, I wish I would listen to more people and sit there and say, "Yeah, Joey, he's a good guy, but not for you," type. Sometimes you gotta listen to those people, but
You know how it is when we're young, though. We think we know everything. We think we know what's best, and now I'm listening. When the OGs talk, I listen.
oh yeah,
I'm
totally.
taking as much advice and wisdom I can from them because if they already lived it, I want to at least give myself that advantage of not going through the trials and tribulations if I don't have to. How many siblings you have?
I just have one sister, no brothers, and she's younger than me.
How's your relationship with her?
Um, growing up, we were very competitive. Um, we were very close. My whole family, my sister, my parents, and I were very close. My parents never missed a sporting event, never a school activity. So they were the at the time I would say the epitome of what parents should be when it comes to raising kids. As I got older, things changed. Obviously, I grew up. I see things differently. And so we're not the same dynamic anymore, I'll put it that way.
Who are some of the most influential people growing up in your life?
Um, I don't think I really had anything because I just, I was always so busy doing things, but I mean, I don't know. I had my family was always my entire family was always there for all my aunts, uncles, cousins, but anyone that really stuck out really didn't really have that one. I mean, I had one high school teacher that I can she helped me out a lot, but I really didn't have that one person to sit there and say, "Hey, this is what I see you doing. This is what you should be doing." So I really didn't have that one or notice anything that really stuck out in my head that was a big influence in my life.
When did you realize you want to join the army, and why the army?
So when I was a junior in high school, I had a army recruiter that followed me to all my sporting events. It was covered like and I didn't really know what it was about at the time. I didn't know the reason why, but he followed me to talk. Um, I was a good runner, but then later on in life, I realized the why. But he was one of the main reasons why I joined because he followed me around. He paid attention to me, um, because I didn't have the means to go to a big university because my parents didn't have the money. Um, then I didn't have the grades to be able to get a scholarship. was looking for a full ride scholarship for track at one college, but later on they were doing some revising of their other academics of their school itself. So I lost that scholarship. So then I realized I had nowhere else to go. So I reached out to the recruiter and said, "Hey, I'm ready to go." I mean, there's nothing for me to do. I mean, you're from a hometown of 1,200 people. What do you have? You don't have the money. You don't have the means. You have no choice but to do something. And I'm the only one that at the time that ended up joining.
Yeah, so you saw the Army as a way out,
I did.
like many of us have.
I did. I wasn't in trouble. I was a good kid, but I guess I wanted something more. And the recruiter made it very, very promising for me to see the world, and I did.
I love recruiters. They're the best. They have a very hard job and they get it done. They're the ultimate salespeople.
Yeah.
What was that whole process like, and how did you figure out what you wanted to do in the Army?
I had a whole checklist of, because the recruiter sat me down and we talked, and he goes, "What are some of the things that you don't want to do in your life?" I said, "Well, I don't want to be behind a desk pushing paper." Look what I do now for a living. But anyway,
The irony.
I know, right? I just didn't see myself. I mean, 19 years old. I mean, I was active. I was still running. I was running 10 miles a day in my high school days. So I was like, I wanted to be outdoors and things. I wanted to, do things with my hands, and so that gave me a good idea, because that was the time where aviation was really just at the time in 1993, where aviation, mainly the Apache world, was opening up for women. And I was one of the first Apache crew chiefs to sign up in 1993. I know there was Cobra crew chiefs, females. I know about them, but when it came to the Apaches, they're different gunships. But yeah, it's one of the first ones.
Wow, that's pretty neat. That's a good fun fact right there.
It is.
That's pretty cool. What made you decide to be an Apache crew chief?
It's either that or diesel trucks. Seriously.
I get it. I see why.
Diesel trucks. I mean, I limited myself to what I wanted to do, honestly. So I said, I want to work with my hands. I wanted to be outside, and either the only thing they had offer for me was to be the Apache crew chief or diesel engines, which is trucks. I'm like, no trucks. I'll take the aircraft.
How'd your parents feel when you told them you joined the Army?
They didn't know at the time, because I was 19. And later on, right before I shipped out in October, so I signed up in June. I told them, and they were okay. My dad spent a few years in the Navy, but they didn't really say anything. They really offered they couldn't, but they knew it was something I wanted to do to get out.
Did they support you? Did they go to your basic and AIT graduation? Did they support you to that level?
They sure did. They even brought one of my favorite aunts to the graduation with me in Fort Jackson. So it was nice to see them there. The only headache that my dad had, or grief, I couldn't say headache, grief, that he really wanted me to go on as an officer, but I didn't. I went enlisted.
Yeah, I think sometimes we're just put in that position where we want to just leave our hometowns and go. That's another 4 years, right? Then you got to come up with the money, unless you get accepted to the ROTC program and all that. But sometimes the sense of urgency of leaving trumps everything else. So you show up to basic. First time you ever leave your small town. How was that culture shock?
It was really interesting, because I was in the very last all-female company or battalion unit. After me, it was all co-ed. So it was hard seeing, being with a lot of women with different personalities. Women, I mean, young girls crying all the time. Some are single moms missing their kids. So it was like, I didn't have any kids. I'm like, this is kind of weird. Why are single moms here? No kids. Why were the kids? It was a lot of mixed emotions. But later on in life, they were bettering themselves for their future. And that's where I stepped up.
So you were one of the last single sex.
Yes.
Basics.
Yes.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah. The very last. Yes.
Was basic hard?
Um, for for me, honestly, the only challenge I had was just the rifle range. The running was easy for me. I was one of the drill sergeants, gazelles. Because myself and my roommate. Eventually, later on, I was a permanent squad leader. Um, because I stepped up for, and I never knew I had it in me. Until later on. But in basic training, I was one of the permanent squad leaders. So I was with me and my roommate. And but yeah, I was like one of the gazelles, the drill sergeants, because I was able to run.
Did you have all female drill sergeants as well?
I had all male drill sergeants.
So all male drill sergeants for all female
Yes.
soldiers.
And
That's
my drill
crazy.
sergeant was Cuban, so he was massive. He's a big
Yeah.
guy.
So you leave basic, you
Mm-hmm.
go to AIT. Where'd you do AIT at?
Fort Eustis, Virginia, for 16 weeks.
Was that co-ed?
It was the barracks was co-ed. The second floor was the all-female floor. So it wasn't very many of us females.
How was that leaving basic and showing up, leaving basic, all females? Now you show up to AIT. Once again, you're from a small town. You're around, now you're introduced to male soldiers. How was that?
It was challenging because you are like eye candy, because you're different. Because everybody want to get to know you. And so it was, but you're just there to do a job, but also make friends. So it was, and then I think we got picked on a lot more being a female than the male soldiers were.
Yeah, that had to be, as you know, the military is a male dominated world. And now you're one of the first ladies to be in an all male world, MOS. I could see how you had your challenges. Did you ever feel like not discriminated but treated different because you're a lady at basic, right? Not basic, but AIT.
Yeah, well, at times, yes, because my class, there's only, I'm gonna say, if I remember correctly, 9 of us, because our class was small as far as going to the schoolhouse. Um, when I think a lot of them were surprised I had some mechanical skills, because I was worked on cars with my dad, so I knew a wrench and vice grips and different sizes of my tools compared to some of the men. And so I felt like they were trying to baby me until I could prove myself. And then some of the some of my classmates and some of the other classes didn't like what they saw, so I ended up having to say something, and it was kind of, then I kind of got embarrassed by it, because one of them were like always had to be beside me. One of the instructors always had to be beside me, watching my technique and whatnot. I'm like, and so it kind of made it seem unfair for all the other soldiers, my classmates and all that stuff, because they were hovering over me. And I'm like, and I didn't, and then all of a sudden I kind of felt uncomfortable by it. And so I ended up saying something like, hey, you just need to leave me alone and pay attention to other people. So I didn't like that, that light bulb on me.
Did you realize at the time that you're a trailblazer? You're setting a path for all the women to follow you?
No, not at all.
It's crazy looking back.
Yeah.
It's crazy how you don't even realize it at the time, how pivotal you doing what you're doing is setting up so many women up for success, and not even realizing what you're doing has the significance of it. When did you find out you were going for your first duty station?
About a month before graduation.
And where were you going?
Fort Hood, Texas.
How'd you feel about that?
I was kind of excited because it's Texas. I had no idea what I was getting myself involved in, and then I realized it was only 8 hours from my parents' house.
What was that, a good thing or a bad thing?
Um, At times it's a good thing for me because, if I just needed to get away, I would just drive home. Seriously, I would
Mhm.
just drive.
So how was it showing up to Fort Hood?
It was hot as all can be. And so the Army was different. Army aviation was different back then than it is today. And I arrived at Fort Hood. I was in a unit called 4 the 501st. And back then, the units were all mixed aircraft. They weren't the same aircraft. So though I only worked on Apaches, my unit still had Blackhawks and Kiowas. So we were combined. Until later on, about mid 90s is when they separated, the units to all strictly aircraft. So I was kind of combined in a bunch of different
Were you
areas.
were you the only female crew chief when you showed up to Fort
Uh,
Hood?
it was me and my other classmate. Her and we went together.
So you two are the first one on site.
There was we were the first two on site, but there were other females, but they were um avionics and armament.
What's one of the biggest difference between an Apache crew chief and a Black Hawk or Chinook crew chief?
I don't get to fly with my aircraft.
So you just maintain it, make sure it's ready to go.
So people sit there and say, "Are you truly a crew chief? Or are you just a mechanic?" And I will fight anybody because I was a crew chief, because I still launched them. I still hooked up, still plugged in, still talked. But at the end of the day, I was still a crew chief.
Yeah, I
That's
didn't even
I
think of
can that.
that. So when you get to Fort Hood, how old are you at the time?
Just turned 20.
Turned 20. What was your rank?
E3.
E3. This is what year is it? 1994?
It was 94, yes.
94. Anything? There's nothing going on in the world at this time, right?
No, not at this time. There was not. I was only Fort Hood at that time. Right, for maybe 4 months. April, May, June, July, August. About between 4 and 6 months. The reason why we were at Fort Hood is we were considered a training battalion, training unit. Since everything was fairly new, Apaches, Blackhawks, Kiowas, we were training together as a whole entire unit to where we will do evaluation. We had to be evaluated to make sure we were able to be a unit and do what we needed to do for whatever mission task needed to be done. So we were in the field a lot, and so we're learning tactics and all that, just everything you could possibly think of, we had to do, even to NTC, 0TC, but mainly just out the back 40. And the reason why was we were on our way to take over a unit in Korea. So, but again, spending that 4 to 6 months in Hood is where I really found out what my true self was and how important it was what we did.
How long were you at Fort Hood for?
The first time only 6 months, and then I came back. The second time it was 4 years.
So those 6 months, that's when they sent you to Korea?
Yeah, I went to Korea with my whole entire unit. We went on C5s and flew from Hood straight to Camp Page, which is Chuncheon, South Korea.
Wow. How long were you there for?
12 months. 12, 13 months.
Was that considered a PCS or what was that? What was that considered?
It was considered a PCS, which ironically I thought was kind of odd because we were only going there anyways. But yeah, I got credit for the PCS move.
What was your biggest takeaway from being in Hood?
I really didn't like Hood. Hood was not what I thought it was going to be.
I don't think I've met one person that liked Fort Hood. What was your most memorable moment while you're at Hood?
As a young private, we were I was doing gate guard with one of my battles, and a higher ranking officer pulled up and didn't know the challenging password, and I was not about to let this person in because that's their job. And so it right in my face. He's yelling right in my face. And I'm like, sir, I'm so sorry. I can't let you in. You don't know the challenging password. So I told my battle to call the talk and say, hey, so and so is coming in. And they're like, what? I mean, he's being yelled at over the phone because the officer is, being stuck because I wouldn't let him in. Later on, I found out who it was, and this person still remembers this day, and it's John Cody. He
Hey,
never came.
you had to do your job, right?
Did my job, and that's all he said afterwards. He's like, I'm very proud of you for not caving. I was like, I have no idea who you are, but thank you. And then later on,
That shows a good character right there.
Mhm.
The average soldier would have been, okay, go on in.
Yep.
So you get to Korea.
Mhm.
Now, how did you feel being in Korea? Because once again, small town. Now you're in a whole different country. How was that like?
It was scary. 'Cause I didn't look like anybody there. Walking around Chuncheon for the first time to be orientated. I was with a couple of my senior non-commissioned officers. Kind of showed me around because it is the way to protect me and kind of get me, used to the area and what to look out for. I had ajumas, agashis, which are the older women there in Korea, pull on my hair because I thought I had a wig on. Someone had scissors in their hand. They wanted to cut some of my hair because I'm a blonde, and I didn't know how to take it. And then I realized, oh, I'm different. But they're the nicest people. They'll do anything for you. I ended up embracing the culture a lot, and the food is amazing. You get yourself in a lot of trouble because there was no drinking age. And there's also some Koreans that are not a big fan of Americans. So I did see that, have been spit on. But I mean, you just have to understand you're in their country, not being asked. You're not asked to come to be there. So,
What was your primary role there? You in the unit?
I was Delta Company maintenance, so I just pretty much did phases.
12 months, mainly did maintenance. What was your most memorable moment in Korea?
It's not a good memory, but it's one of those memories that'll always live with you. I had one of my pilots that got killed over in Korea because he was doing a tour of the area with a 58 pilot, and ended up crossing over the DMZ and getting shot down. That pilot, the 58 pilot, he's the one that survived. He was actually kidnapped, and the Apache pilot, he ended up getting killed. And so still today, I've always questioned, from this incident, how was the 58 pilot still able to stay in and retire when he got somebody killed? But I mean, that's all politics there above my head. But I mean, I know it was an accident. No one, say, I'm gonna go fly over the DMZ today. No one says that. So I know it was an accident. But yeah, it took the act of Congress to get the other pilot who was kidnapped back. But that was one of the memories that will stick to you because it happened right before Thanksgiving in November of '94. We still had soldiers in the unit still stuck at Hood trying to get to Korea, and everything came to a screeching halt. No movement, no nothing. We couldn't even base for quite some time.
So how did that? I just want to ask a few questions about that story. How did that happen? Were they single ship, dual ship?
I don't know. I don't know if they're a single ship or dual ship. Honestly, because we weren't. I mean, I was only in E3, and we weren't privy to all the information. But yeah, I honestly think it was a single ship.
So 2 pilots in a 58 cross the DMZ. They get shot down. One makes it, the other one doesn't. The one that didn't made it, he essentially became a hostage. And then Congress released him.
Yeah, they had to fight hard to release him.
Man, that's interesting.
Yeah. Good old Bob Dole. The reason why I remember that name is because he was a representative of Kansas.
How did you deal with that? That was your first experience with loss in the military.
It was hard because I actually knew him. I met him. We had some great conversations. He was one of those what we call typical Apache pilots who, face fear. Like, it wasn't scared of fear. He drove a Corvette and he was wild and crazy, and nothing scared him. And he was just downright a good guy. Obviously, didn't deserve this, but it was an accident. But just being 20 years old and not knowing what exactly happened, it was hard. It's hard. And it was even still today, I still think about it's like, wow, what it could have been to see. Yeah, he was a great guy.
What was your biggest takeaway from being in Korea?
You're in somebody else's country. Don't act like a jackass because you think you can and you can't, because you can get yourself in a lot more trouble than you really think you can. And so just embrace their culture, learn their culture, and become a better human being.
How do you think that helps you become a better American? When you come back to the country, realizing that things are good here in America, but we do have to respect other countries, and people do live differently than us, and we do look different than them, and we have to be respectful. How did that help you when you came back?
Um, it helped me in a lot of facets because growing up in a small town, very, very rural, um, never only top place I've really been outside of Kansas really was DC. But going to another country was like as an eye opener. It's like there are other parts of the world than just where we live in. And what you see on TV really is not the reality. It's a lot of it's fabricated or overzealous, but it makes you appreciate what you have, and it teaches you that it's okay, that we're all different because the world is different.
So when you get back to Korea, where do you go next?
I go back to Fort Hood, Texas.
You must have pissed somebody off in the Army.
Well, I was in Korea. What I told you about is sometimes you gotta listen to people.
Yeah.
They may have some good news to tell you. I got married over there, so I ended up going to Korea, back to Texas.
So you got married in Korea.
I did.
You come back to Hood, and you're in Hood for 4 years?
4 years.
Doing the same thing, crewing Apaches?
Mm-hmm. I did.
What was the difference between the first time you were at Hood and the second time?
I was an E4, and I get back from Korea, I was pregnant, so that had a big black eye on me, a big target on my back. They put me back into maintenance. I was still working. They always taught you in school, 3-hand contact, make sure you always 3-point of contact every time. Had maintenance carts. I was climbing on maintenance carts to get in the aircraft to do what I got to do until somebody decided to rat me out to the safety officer. And so the safety officer and I had a few choice words and said, he's saying, I can't work. And I said, who says I can't work?
They're trying to put limitations on you just because you were pregnant at the time.
Yes.
And you felt you could do the job, right?
I was doing just fine. I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
As long as I was safe, there was no issues.
So did that safety officer pull you off the flight line, or?
He did, unfortunately. So again, I stayed in maintenance in Delta Company. And so I kind of worked with the tools and the parts and filing paperwork. And I'm like, stuff I really didn't want to do, but essentially I know it's important work. But I mean, I just wanted to do other things that I was told what I wanted to do until after I had the baby.
How'd you feel being restricted like that? Someone telling you can't do something and you know that you can do it.
It was hard because they treat you like a disease. I'm pregnant. I'm not a disease.
By the time you retired, I'm gonna go a little forward here. By the time you retired, did you see any difference in that?
I did.
At least we evolved. That's a good thing.
But sometimes I feel now it's not everybody else. It's the women that put themselves in that position. I wanted to work while I was pregnant. I've had soldiers who were pregnant that didn't want to work. They said, I'm pregnant, I can't work. I'm like, yeah, you can. So it kind of,
I see. I see now. I see. So it's like that double-edged sword, right? I think that's one of yeah, that's one of the biggest things I struggle with, how everybody people like to categorize people, like, if one person does it, everyone does it, right? I think that's one of the biggest issues I have. I think we really need to treat people individually, and I get it. Some people, like you said, some people may, use that to their advantage. Other people may wanna just still work and continue moving forward. What was your biggest takeaway from that second time in Hood?
it's stand your ground. I mean, yeah, I had target on my back because I was pregnant. I know I was capable of still doing the job, but still stand your ground. I mean, later on afterwards, I went and to Alpha Academy and became a crew chief with my crew dogs. But I mean, you just can't tell people, you can't let people tell you what to do when you know your own limitations, because your body eventually, whoever you are, um, tells you what your limitations are. So don't let someone else that doesn't know you tell you what your limitations are.
What was your most memorable moment?
Oh, my most memorable moments in when I was in Hood. I did a joint mission in Biloxi, City, Mississippi with all the other armed forces. So it was the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. And I learned that there's a huge difference between how we all operate, especially when it comes to being a crew dog. Here, I'm on the flight line, have the big box, green toolbox, carrying it on my shoulder, walking out to the aircraft where you had the Air Force had a trike basket and the Navy had like a golf cart. I'm like, this be nice. And they're laughing at me because, myself and a couple other crew dogs were like carrying our toolboxes in here, and they're like, oh, sucks to be you.
You went from Hood, Korea,
Yep.
Hood,
Yep.
and then back to Korea.
Yes.
Did you wanna go back to Korea, or did the Army just send you back to Korea?
Um, no, this Army just sent me back to Korea. Because I was
Ho
not very well liked.
I was gonna say, I don't know who you pissed off. How did you feel going back to Korea?
I was happier going back to the second time, because I was going to somewhere else. Because I was going to the cav. I was going to the cavalry. What's this cav? And that's a totally, totally day and night type of unit. I just loved it. Earned my Stetsons and spurs, but just a different type of camaraderie.
Did you take the baby with you when you went to Korea?
No, I did not. My kids, I ended up having another one at Hood. Um, they stayed with my parents.
Now, your husband at the time, did he go to Korea with you as well, or you went solo?
Uh, well, I went solo because that's when our relationship started falling apart. And when I got to Korea, because I told my exes at the time, my ex at the time, that when I'm coming back from Korea, I'm not coming back to Hood to be with you. So, I went solo until I get a phone call like 2 months later saying, "Where do you want your husband?" I was like, "Far away from me."
And they kept it that way?
Yes, they did.
Good.
He went back to Page, the same unit he was in the first time we were there.
Now, when you first joined, and
Mm,
I'm only asking because I'm not sure right now.
uh-huh.
Were the Apaches and the Kiowas already a part of cavalry units? 'Cause I know you said everything was together. Did they start separating,
Yeah,
or how did that work?
so when I got to Hood the second time, everything was split. So that's the Army started splitting all the aircraft in different battalions. And the reason why is some aircraft cost more budget-wise than others. And so when you have all aircraft mixed in, some aircraft take more money than the other ones do. So the Army kind of got smart and separated them. So when I went back to Hood the second time, when I was there the 4 years, everything was split. So I was in a strictly nothing but an Apache battalion. And then so when I went to Korea the second time, it was strictly all Apaches.
Now, to get your Stetsons and your Spurs, did you have to do a spur ride?
It was a little differently than normal Casper ride, but yeah, I did.
How was that? How was that experience?
It was fun. You know, it was fun.
And just for the people that don't know what we're talking about, being a part of the Cav, you get a Stetson, you get some Spurs, you usually get a belt buckle too, right? I know some people get it; they get that on their own, but most of the time you just get the Stetson and the Spurs. And I know when you go to combat with the Cav, you get golden
Yes,
Spurs.
you
So
do.
it's just a tradition thing, which was I was blessed to get, not blessed, but I was honored to get my golden Spurs in my Stetson when I went to Afghanistan in 2012-13. I was with the cavalry out there, so it was pretty cool. So you leave Korea. What
Hmm.
what was the difference between the first time and the second time at Korea?
Um, I I was I was more of a senior NCO. I was an NCO at the time, but the second time I was there, though I earned my Stetson Spurs, there was people there that just I did not get along with, that just tried to make my life a living hell. So I was still learning a lot about, you know, you're always learning your job, regardless of what rank you are, you know, and how old you are. You're always having find ways to learn because sometimes you miss out on a lot of things. Um, but I had one guy that just went NCO. Him and I went toe to toe, and always trying to get me fired. And I finally gave up. I'm like, you know what? I said, I can't work with him. I'm done. So I said, you movie because I mean it was one thing or another. As this, he was one of the worst people I've ever worked with in my life, and so I just instead of trying to deal with it, I just like just moved me. So I ended up doing other things just to kind of for my sanity because I was about to go off and become really unbecoming.
How did that help you? That experience, how did it help you become a better leader at that moment and in the future?
It taught me that there's ways to treat people and talk to people, and you always have to learn people's strengths and weaknesses. Because I had a weakness, instead of trying to work on my weakness and talk about my weakness, he used that as a mechanism to where it was more of a little like, you know, see, you don't know what you're doing, you know, trying to ways to put me down. And everyone has a weakness. No one's perfect. He wasn't even perfect. And I finally told him in his face, like, you know, is this how you treat your wife? Do you disrespect your wife as like this? Do you talk to her like this? Because I figured you probably won't because she'll smack the shit out of you. Uh, so I don't have nothing against women. I was like, I feel like you do because you're treating me like this. So it's you just there's ways to handle certain things than doing what he did. So I learned, you know, sit down and talk to someone on one and get to know somebody and ask the whys than assuming. And that's what I've always been learning from here on out.
What was your rank at the time? So you're E6. How many years in the Army so far?
Uh, 5.
At this point, did you realize you were going to stay 20 years, or were you still thinking about getting out? How are you feeling about the Army as a whole?
I was still kind of stuck because my initial enlistment was 6 years.
So you had another year. Were you thinking about getting out, or were you just thinking, how were you feeling at the time about the Army?
Um, I still liked it because this gave me a roof over my head and helped me out, you know, with my kids. So I was still destitute to want to stay in a little bit longer.
Where are you going next? That's a better question.
Um, they had me going. I think back to Hood.
Really?
And so I called up my branch manager and I said, listen, I don't want to go back to the Hood. I don't want to be anywhere near my soon to be ex. Send me somewhere. He goes, all right, Joey, all right. Oh, I have, because I kind of wanted to be a drill sergeant at the time. I said, send me to drill sergeant school. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to be a drill sergeant because I had kids. I'm like, okay, fine. He goes, well, you can be an instructor at Eustis. I'm like, I'll take it. I will take it. So that's what I did. And I went to Eustis.
So you go back to Eustis, second time you've been there.
Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling about that?
I was relieved. Get to do something I love doing. Going to a new place I've never been besides food.
What year was this?
This was 2000.
2000. So you show up. Did you know immediately that you're going to be a platform instructor or essentially that's what you guys are called, right? Platform instructor?
Yes,
So you did the whole Army instructor training course and all that?
I did.
How did you like being an instructor?
I loved it. I really loved it. My small group, just letting people know that I'm capable and competent of doing my job, especially seeing the looks on the new student's face, learning and comprehending, and like I'm being taught by a woman, especially when it comes to like certain aspects of, teaching. They're like, oh, I can't believe she said that, it's a prime example, being in aviation, we all know, they all have engines and four components. It sucks, squeeze, bings, and blows. That's what each, into block. And just the looks on their faces is priceless. Like, yeah, she said that. I'm like, that's what it does.
Were you one of the only female instructors?
On the platform, no. I had another female instructor, another one of my battles. She was an instructor. She ended up working in the office doing paperwork. So I don't know what happened there.
Now, as these younger soldiers started coming up, did they look up to you?
I not really. It's more of the younger men that did, the younger than the females. Because I mean, I had one female that had issues and just trying to figure it out, and my other instructors kept telling me to mind my own business, and like, well, if she's sick, she's pregnant, I need to know this for safety, and so, but I had more of the younger guys look up to me because even still, after I left, used to teaching, and I further on my career, I still had some of my students still come up here and told me thank you, and they appreciated me and whatnot. And so, I mean, I guess I did something right.
How long were you at Eustis?
3 years.
3 years?
Mm-hmm.
You made E7 there?
I did.
How fast did you make E7?
9 years.
That's pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
At what point did you realize you wanted to become an officer?
When I PCS from Eustis to Fort Campbell.
So while you're at Eustis, that's when 9/11 happened, right?
It did.
What were you doing during 9/11?
I was actually in the schoolhouse, getting ready to start teaching, and we were told to send all the students home because we had to have a sit-down powwow what we're going to do with all of our unusable aircraft in the schoolhouse, because they wanted us to start writing on all the deficiencies on them so we can be able to fix it, how much it's going to cost, or we're going to piecemeal them apart and send them over to Iraq because of the war. And they wouldn't let any of us leave. We wanted all deploy, but they said no. We needed to spruce up all the students.
Is this where you met Irv as well?
It was. Yeah, it was.
How was that? Because I heard his story on his episode. I want to hear your side.
Well, he has one story, but the truth. He says he has his side, but I have the truth. So, we met during PT formation because you're sitting there in formation, and obviously you're like one of a handful of females in the whole entire schoolhouse. And so it was myself and then one platoon and another platoon, which is his platoon. And I was happened to be on the first row, which I hated. But his best friend was also a platoon sergeant. They were kept looking at me and he kept kind of pointing and whatnot. And then like you have this feeling of like someone staring at you. So I did a stupid thing as I kind of leaned forward, looked left, didn't see anything, looked right, and looked left, and I kind of see, or just like stand up really fast. And then like about maybe a month later, I knew that he was going to the gym. I lived on post housing, which is not right around the corner from the schoolhouse where I worked in the gym. So actually the gym's on the other side, sorry. So I drove up to the gym because I needed to start working out. So I gained a lot of weight from stress. So I started going to the gym. I started seeing him a lot more, and then finally he had the balls to ask me out. What he did was he goes into his glove compartment, and on a service tag he rips off his name and just a phone number and gives it to me. And I'm like, okay, so this is on a Friday. He says, well, let's go out on Friday night or Saturday. I remember the actual day. And so I called and it goes, this number is no longer in service. I'm like, okay, so I figured maybe I had big hands. So I think maybe my fat fingered the number because we had the old cell phones and more the brick ones. And sure enough, I kept calling and nothing. And so come Monday morning, I face to face with him. I said, dude, I am 28 years old. I do not play these child games. So if you really want to go out with me, you should never give me the wrong phone number. Here you go. He goes, I never gave you the wrong phone number. I'm like, yeah, you did. And he looked at it and goes, oh, my bad.
He gave you the wrong number? Herb, you're killing me, bruh.
It was an accident because he says, who looks at their service sticker to make sure their address and phone number is right? I said, well, I do, obviously.
Mm-hmm. So how did you forgive him after that? How did he make up for that?
He really apologized. He said it was never his intent. And I said, well, I said, I'm too old for this. I have kids. I don't need this. We're to the point where we don't need to be playing games. I agree with you. And and then he's like, well, can we try this again? I said, I don't know if I really should, but you're kind of cute, so I guess I will. So.
How did you feel? I'm gonna backtrack to 9/11 real quick. How did you feel that you're essentially in an all peacetime military, and now everything was switching after 9 years in the Army, right?
Mm-hmm.
9 years in the Army, you're halfway there. At this point, you decided you're gonna make it a career in State 20?
Actually, that's when I really wanted out.
Really?
I did. I hit my mark. I was exhausted, and what really made me stay in. And it wasn't my company commander or the battalion commander that talked to me. It was actually Urban. We were just dating at the time because we didn't get married until later on. And he was like, what are you going to do when you get out? I said, I have no idea. Yeah, you're right. Especially, being from a small town, I had to like reflect on that. I'm going, well, shit, he's right. Well, what am I going to do? I mean, what I did wasn't a bad job. So I decided to stay in because, with some of his past, I could understand why he said what he said. So I'm like, well, I ended up staying in and I don't regret it. I mean, he really knocked some sense of reality in me about staying in.
So you decided to stay in.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel knowing that essentially the military, we're all going to combat eventually? How'd you start feeling at that time?
I was more anxious because of having children, of having girls.
When you leave Fort Eustis the second time, where do you go next?
Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I was an 8th of 101st.
8th of 101st. What year was that?
This was in 2004.
2004.
Mm-hmm.
And they're already separated too, right? Cav, they had a Cav over there and GSAB.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, this is before the aviation brigade kind of split up and got rid of 8th Battalion.
What was your biggest takeaway being a platform instructor at Eustis for 3 years?
Really get to know the people you're working with, and mainly your students. Is if you were a platform instructor, you really got to know your students, know their strengths and weaknesses, and work on the weaknesses to make them a better person. And just let them know whatever they do in life reflects everything else they do from here on out.
What's your most memorable moment being at Eustis?
Just all my students graduating was the highlight of my time, the seeing every single one of them graduate. None of them were afraid to come and ask me a question and how to do something. That's really the highlight.
Being a woman in the military, you made E7 pretty fast. You're fast tracking. You're having a good career. Did you ever feel like you had any huge challenges or barriers you had to get by?
There was one, and I don't know. Actually, I had two. One of them, he had really. It was a command sergeant major, and he had no right of doing what he did. It's right when I got to Eustis, and he was trying to. Now the terminology is mansplain. He was trying to explain how to be a woman in the Army. And here I'm already E6. Already think I'm pretty understand how this works. I'm not stupid. He had pulled all us females aside and explaining to us how to be a woman in the military.
So we have a man telling you how to be a woman in the military.
Exactly.
Yeah, that sounds like some sergeant major bullshit right there.
Yeah.
How did you handle that situation?
I just kind of laughed. I just laughed. I'm like, okay, whatever. You feel you mess, then you had nothing else better to do.
So when you get to Campbell, how was that like?
Fort Campbell for me was very, very. I was very more nervous going there than anywhere I've ever been, just because of just what Campbell's all about. It's Campbell. It's 101st. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to a place where they have a lot more expectations of me because of just of who they are. And so yeah, I was very, very more anxious but excited in the long run.
So what'd you do when you got there?
So when I first got to 8th Battalion, the units just got back from the very first deployment. And we were in the process of doing a passing review in the big, huge, pomps and circumstances there, the big field. And we were marching around, and not one time have I got pulled in the office or anything to welcome me. I'm a senior non-commissioned officer. I'm an E7 at the time, and expecting to be, where my march orders, where do you want me at, and things like that. And so at the end of the day of all the, these soldiers marching the heat, I mean, we're aviators. We're in aviation. We don't know how to march.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, you know that. That's not what we do for a living. But after it was over, the sergeant major asked, does anybody have any questions? I said, well, I raised my hand, Sky. He goes, well, who are you and what are you doing? I'm like, well, so first of all, you should know who I am because you never did bring me in your office to talk to me, but are you going to tell these people to go get haircuts? And ever since then, he's like, where are you not going to have a one-on-one talk? I was like, well, we should, Sergeant Major. And then he thought I was kind of too mean. So that's when he made me the battalion retention in COIC because he didn't like my attitude.
I was going to ask you that. With you becoming an E7, did they start taking you out of maintenance and putting you in other positions?
They did. I actually had a gig to be a platoon sergeant, but when they found out who it was, then that never happened. So I was getting really, really frustrated not getting my platoon. And so I worked for the sergeant major, trying to keep soldiers in, and I didn't care if a soldier stayed in or not. It doesn't affect me at all. Yeah, me affect numbers, but I'm not going to force a soldier to stay in. They honestly don't want to stay in. And that's again where him and I went round and round and round. And then I started seeing him his hands on soldiers, sitting them down, so we're going to talk. I had no choice. I went to the brigade sergeant major, who I'd known for years, and I said, listen, he's not going to keep putting his hand on soldiers just to try to get them to imitate them to stay in. It's not happening on my watch. And so he was forced to retire.
I was going to ask what you mean by putting hands on them.
Well, we were sitting in the theater in the classroom, and he would separate the soldiers who definitely wanted out, who were on the fence of staying in, and who definitely wanted to stay in. And he literally was sit there, and one soldier got up because he had enough. And these kids just got back from their very first deployment. Some of these kids have never seen any of this stuff in their life. And so I had a lot of empathy for that. It's like, if you don't want to stay in, then don't stay in. It's your choice. But he wanted to make sure these kids had a plan. It's not up to you. It's not up to me. It's up to them. If they have a plan, they have a plan. If not, they will figure it out. Hands down. He grabbed one and set him back down on the seat. And I'm taking my notes. And took it up to the grade tab major. I'm like, this is it. He's not doing this ever again.
How long were you retention off NCO for?
Probably a year. And the reason why I say that is because I started getting really in the good graces of the commanding general of Fort Campbell at this time, because some of the soldiers wanted him to do the reenlistment. I'm like, okay, I'll make it happen. So I would call the aide and say, hey, can we do either a mass reenlistment or an individual reenlistment, whatever one is free? And so that's where my career at that point started changing.
Changing how?
Because I've always wanted to at the time be a command sergeant major because I love the soldiers, but seeing, and this is where I've always been torn for myself. Though I left the NCO side to be an officer side, where I felt I could have made the NCO side better because of who I was and what I saw. But then again, I was frustrated by how everything was. So I asked the CG a favor, using one of his slots to go to OCS and get completely out.
And he gave you that? He gave you that slot?
He gave me that slot because he kind of owed me a favor for doing all those reenlistments. He said, if you ever need anything, let me know. I'm like, I took up on it because I got turned down for warrant officer.
That was my next question. Why didn't you become a warrant? Because you could have been maintenance warrant all day.
I could have, but we all know being a warrant officer was all about who you know, and I did not reach out to the people I knew for a little recommendation. I wanted them to see me for me. It kind of bit me in the ass because obviously General Cody would have wrote me a letter, and I didn't want that because I kind of felt like kissing ass or whatnot. But I mean, he would have done it in a heartbeat, but I didn't, so I got overlooked, and it was the most hardest thing I've ever have felt in my life, because I remember when I got my first letter of being denied. This is when Irvin was in 6th Battalion. He was a warlord. And I hung out with y'all a lot because I love you guys. You guys were the best. I mean, hands down, I loved hanging out with y'all. And just the respect I got, not because I was E7, I was Irvin's wife. But it was nice. But I remember Michelle Sheffield. Do you remember her? Do you remember her?
I do remember.
Yeah, she pulled me. Irvin told her what happened, and she pulled me aside and she said, "You know what? It's okay. Not everyone gets picked up at the first time." And I kind of like, okay. And then I waited the next round, got denied again, hit me even harder. And I said, Michelle, and at the time, or told, Michelle, and she pulled me aside. I'm like, you know what? I'm sorry, it's tough out there. And I told her, I'm done. I said, I can't do this no more. I just went completely out of the military at that point. And so Michelle and her had a conversation, and that's where I made a decision where if somebody, I don't know if it was Michelle or somebody else, that said, well, would you try and go to OCS? And then that kind of clicked. That's when, the CG said if I needed a favor or anything and I asked him. That's what my life changed after I got denied warrant officer program twice.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
I want to go back to what kept you from asking General Cody for that letter of recommendation. And the reason I asked that is because you and I know that it's not what you know, it's who you know in life. And with nepotism the way it is, and it's all about I live by a philosophy, and I used to think like, I can't get people's help, but I realized that we're all one person away from changing our life forever.
I felt that I felt if I would have used him, that I would have gotten treated a lot differently and not in a good way. Oh, you're one of his cronies, and it's not the case. He hands down was one of the best commanders I have ever had the pleasure of working with. He was for the soldier, and so I really wanted to, but I didn't, because it was at the point it was about me, not who I knew, and that's why. I mean, he would have done it in a heartbeat. I mean, we've had many talks, and but I just, yeah, I didn't do it because I didn't want the special treatment, or oh, you just got the position because so and so, and I didn't want that over my head.
When you made that decision to go to OCS, what year was it?
This was in 06. You all just went to Iraq.
I was gonna ask you, how did you feel being a spouse of your now Irv is in combat for the first time as an aviator? How are you feeling? How are the kids feeling? What was home
Um,
like?
so I was at Benning when you guys were gone. The kids were with my parents. So it was hard because I wasn't able to talk to him like some of the other spouses. But it kept my mind preoccupied for what was going on. And I knew my kids were gonna be safe. But I was just fortunate enough that you all came back when I was graduating, because he was able to do graduation. But though being in school kept my mind more at ease, more comfortable.
How hard was OCS?
It was very hard for me. Not only mainly because I was an aviation background, and all of the instructors, all the cadre were infantry or range. They were all rangers, infantry. They looked really down upon me because I was being aviation, especially being a woman. My cadre was really cool. He was a little bit not as hard as some of the others I had that were not mine. I actually had one cadre said I lied. I cheated on a test, which I never did cheat on a test.
Damn.
Um, and it was the 5 mile run. He said I cheated on the 5 mile run in front of my cadre.
How was he making that claim? What was he saying?
I ran too fast.
He
He
said
said
you ran too
a woman shouldn't be running as fast as I did. And he said,
The ignorance, man.
infantry standard run a 5 mile run was 40 minutes, and I ran it in 38.
He was mad about that. Man, the amount of shit y'all deal with, man, is crazy.
My cadre is like, she didn't cheat. I saw her the whole entire time.
Yeah, Das. I laugh out of sheer like bewilderment. Like, I can't believe people act like this, especially in a professional environment. It blows my
Exactly.
mind. It blows my
Exactly.
mind. What was besides what you just said? What was the biggest challenges with OCS?
It's just the techniques, the some of the things never knew the officers knew, like operation orders. I had no idea what an op order was.
Mm.
And learning that was like, so officers, they do plan things that we as NCOs and enlisted don't know about unless you're part of the mission. And so like in aviation, being a mechanic, you're a mechanic. You don't worry about what's everybody else is doing. But being on that side, I was like, oh, there is a lot of processes and techniques of tactics that you have to learn, and movements and times, and places, and everything has to be in an order for it to function and work correctly. And being on the side I was on originally enlisted, you never knew that. You're told what to do and you just do it.
Uh-huh.
Never knew about the planning. And so I had a hard time figuring that out. How to do an off-board, and especially when it came to the navigation. It's not my cup of tea.
Uh-huh. I get it. I really do. When you left, when did you realize what your branch was going to be?
When right before we graduated, because we don't get to choose. We give them a top 10.
Top 10?
Oh, I mean like top 5, but you place them in order. You rank them all the branches in order, except for the men. Men's first one always has to be infantry.
What were your top 3?
I did put logistics. A quartermaster logistics is one. I think I put either a signal or admin as 2 and 3.
You didn't want to stay aviation?
I didn't want to fly. I didn't have the scores to fly. I didn't even take the test out. Who knows if I had the scores or not? But I psyched myself out thinking I wouldn't be able to pass.
So what'd you end up? What did they pick for you?
Quartermaster.
Quartermaster.
Mm-hmm.
Did you go back to Fort Campbell after OCS?
I sure did, because I couldn't go back to the 96th, because 8th Battalion transitioned to the 96th. And I couldn't stay there because I was already enlisted. And I was going to try to stay there because I knew the brigade commander. So this is where everything for me got, like, I don't know, when you're in a unit that you know everybody, you can't help but talk to people, okay? When the brigade commander, I've known, again, for years, and I know I was wrong. I was wrong. Said, hey, come see me. I want to talk to you. And so I did. I jumped the battalion commander's head, went and talked to the brigade commander. Didn't think it was a big deal at the time. And sure it was. I didn't know the battalion commander from Kingdom Come, and boy, he chewed me up and down, left, right, inside out. He goes, I never want to see your face in this unit, this brigade ever again. Get the F out, bye. I'm like, okay.
That was the battalion commander acting like that.
Yep. Didn't even give me a chance to all I said, hey, he wanted to talk to me. Not a big deal. He's the one that signed my paperwork. He's the one that signed my OCS paperwork. And he wanted to tell me congratulations.
Why was he that mad about it?
Because I didn't come talk to him first. And I know I was wrong. But, I didn't think I needed his permission, because when the brigade commander said, come talk to me, I didn't think I needed his permission. Mm-hmm. I didn't know how the officer structure worked. NCOs, whatever, But
that's very interesting.
So I ended up going to 20th Quartermaster with the BSB.
Did the brigade commander ever find out that he acted that way? That's interesting. I would see a problem if you went to talk to him about work and finding a job over the battalion commander's head, right?
But in a sense, the brigade commander wanted to know what I wanted to do. But I didn't know the battalion commander. He did, if anything, he didn't know me. And I said the brigade commander at the time signed my paperwork to go to OCS, so he knew everything about me. And so he was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, because he knew Irvin was also in the brigade. So he just wanted my input. And I honestly, I don't care. The battalion commander checked me out. It is what it is. I have thick skin. And I'm happy it happened I'm glad it happened the way it did, because I would have done what I've done from here on out.
So you went to the 20th Quartermaster?
I did. Purified water.
How was that?
It was interesting. Very, very interesting. You kind of see a different side of the military, and way things are structured. So you have aviation, everyone's prima donnas, the other side, like, you do tents, you Drive trucks everywhere you go, the convoys. Like it's pretty cool knowing the different side of the army and really seeing how the numbers play out on the whys. Why do you have one water buffalo? Why do you have so many trucks? And then you learn that it's like, oh, the army is kind of smart. We're not dumb.
There's a lot of moving pieces, man, parts, and it's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that people don't really see.
Yeah.
How are you feeling? You in the Army over 10 years now. We're at E7, a senior non-commissioned officer. Now you're a second lieutenant as a O grade, and that's two different worlds. People treat you differently. Just from that thing alone, you going from an E7 to a second lieutenant overnight, you get treated differently, and necessarily not in a good way, in my opinion. That's Jason's opinion. But how was that transition for you?
Actually, it was not a bad transition. Because I actually got a lot more respect as a second lieutenant with my experience than a different second lieutenant did, no experience.
That makes a lot of sense. So when you show up to the 20th quartermaster, were you put into leadership positions immediately?
I was first platoon leader. We named ourselves Blueprint because we set the stone. Everybody wanted to emulate us, so we were rock solid. Blueprint.
Was a deployment on your radar at all?
We were told we were deploying. And the way the BSB, which is Brigade Support Battalions, work is we were able to deploy individually as companies than as units. So us 20 quartermaster, we were the only ones out of the BSB that deployed, and we deployed on our own to Iraq.
To Iraq?
Mm-hmm.
Were you attached to another unit?
We were active duty, attached to a National Guard battalion. Brigade was reserves, and everybody hated us. We
Really?
were as deaf children. Sure was.
That is crazy.
Plus, we were the 101st.
What year did this happen?
This was in 07.
07.
Yeah. The war in Iraq just started transitioning to more peacetime, to everything was going to Afghanistan. Our mission was to train Iraq soldiers how to purify water, how to still maintain peace by sending equipment from Iraq to Afghanistan. So we were there for 15 months. We were last unit to stay 15 months.
So help me out here. Irv was deployed in 06, right? They got back in 06. You go in 07.
Mm-hmm. High five.
I was gonna say, how did you guys even see each other, and how did you guys work that out? Because that is a lot of demand on a marriage, being away from each other that long.
It was hard because when you guys were over in deployed when I was at home. Because Irvin, we talked. I think the difference is because when Irvin and I talked, me being in, I understood everything. And so I tried to do my part to be a good wife and attend like family relatives group meetings and whatnot. And I became really good friends with some of the wives that, in the warlords, and also again attending FRG meetings. And I made a split a couple of times about conversations that Irvin and I have, like, because I get background. Oh, did y'all just get mortared? And he had to hang up real quick. And I'm like, oh yeah, they just got mortared the other day. And none other husbands has said anything to the spouse. I'm like, that's idiots. It's all over the news. And then Irv will get chewed out by some of the guys because if my big mouth. But I'm like, and I keep kidding, I'm also a soldier, so I understand. These other husbands are like telling their wives, everything's fine. When I'm like, okay, but you don't see everything on TV. So yeah, Irvin had to tell me several times, remember, yes, you're a soldier, but you're a spouse. Be a spouse and don't say shit. Okay.
How important is communication to your relationship?
It was really good. It was very, very important, and understanding what was going on. I kind of felt like after I spilled the beans on a few times that he would quit talking to me, but he didn't, because I mean it was important. And And there were times where I wasn't able to hear from him because he was on a special mission, and where the conversation was very, very, it was dictated what he can say and when I could ask. I'm like, and so I told him, like, if you can't talk to me, then don't worry about talking to me. Just pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm alive, click, and that's it. Because I mean, I didn't like not having to be able to have a conversation when everything was dictated, whatever. So I'm like, it's very silent. But I'm afraid to ask anything, you know, because of the special mission he was on, like, so, but.
When you get ready for your deployment, your first deployment, how are you feeling?
I was anxious because again, you're going to a completely different country. It's not Korea. Not knowing the means, but also you knew the war was settling down, so you don't know how busy it was going to be. But literally, when we were there, we got maybe more than one time, and that was really it. The full 15 months, and pretty much just like my soldiers were having fun because we had a movie theater, we had concerts, we had pools. I'm like, and I'm looked at myself like, are we really deployed? Are we just like whatever? But I mean, we were just, again, at the tail end. It was still a deployment. We still had missions to do. We still had things to do. I still traveled around the outlying FARPs where we were at in Blood, because we still had to purify water in the outlying posts. So I was the only platoon leader that actually got out and did that, because I actually jumped on different Black Hawks and was able to travel, you know, and see what my other soldiers were up to, make sure they were safe. They had food. The living quarters were sufficient. They weren't being mistreated. So working with them doing that was great. I loved that part of my job as platoon leader.
What was your biggest takeaway from that deployment?
You really got to know your soldiers, and what they are capable of doing, because you may think they can do something, doesn't mean they should be doing something. And you learn that, especially for me being a woman. My first sergeant was a woman, and her and I butted heads religiously. And when it came time to pick soldiers for those outlying FOBs, she chose all males. I'm like, what about the females? Females are capable of doing this too. But in this sense, I took it to heart. I mean, I was livid. I said, why not? Why not? And then sitting back after years later, she did the right thing, because you got to know your audience. They're going to all male infantry units. And so just because we know that our female soldiers can do it, but we still had to protect our female soldiers because we don't know what kind of unit they're going into.
Yeah, that makes a significant difference.
And I fought hard for them. But then again, I had to sit back and have like a reality check. It's like, well, she has something there, because I'm telling her and I went rounds and rounds and rounds.
How do you think that reality check helped you evolve as a leader?
Because you as a leader sometimes are not always right. It's okay to be wrong. And I took that and realized, you know, she made sense. And you again, as knowing your audience, because you think they can do it, not just mean they can't do it, but really should they do it. So it's one of those, you really had to, you know, really pay attention and swallow that pill. And I was okay with it. I learned, you know, it's okay to try to push, but also swallow because you were wrong.
When you got back from that deployment, where'd you go next?
After deployment, I went to a place I loved, and that was 3rd of the 101st Aviation Battalion. Back home to good old aviation.
What'd you do there?
I started out as in the battalion S4 until we actually left from Campbell back to deployment. We went to Afghanistan. Worked, just mainly handed out uniforms for the RFI, because the RFI was a mess. It was a horrible mess. So issuing out uniforms while we were deployed, and then that's where I got selected to be the Echo Company Commander for 3rd Battalion.
Now, is this the time when Irv became an Apache pilot?
It sure was. And boy, I hated him for that too.
Why is that?
Well, if you think about it, if you're in a Black Hawk, you can go anywhere there is. Apaches, you're only limited to so many places.
Yeah.
And so even myself as a former, Apache crew chief, I was only limited to those at same places. So being able to, go to other areas, I felt like he was limiting me. But then again, it made me happy because when the battalion, the brigade found out that Irvin went from flying Blackhawks to transition to Apaches, he says, "Well, I'm going to put you back into Apaches." And with my background being Apaches, helped me get the position too. So,
How was that conversation when you guys talked about him making that transition?
what conversation?
He was just like, "Hey, Joey, this is what I'm doing."
Well, I don't blame him. And the person who talked to him was someone I knew very well too. Was General Richardson or Colonel Richardson at the time, and I knew him and his wife in Korea. And so, like, it is what it is. I mean, they're always looking for good people. And when Colonel, I think it was a colonel at the time, I think it was a colonel at the time, when he was talking to him to Irv about flying, I was like, it's Colonel Richardson. Why not? Him and his wife are always been great people. So I was upset, but then I got over it.
What was your biggest takeaway from being in the 20th Quartermaster?
I always listened and paid attention to my soldiers because still today they call me up and just to chat, see how things were going. So, is earning their respect.
How did you feel from going from a leadership position to a staff officer when you got to 3rd Battalion? It was 3rd Battalion, right?
Mm-hmm.
How'd you feel about that?
I didn't like it because it took me away from the soldiers. Soldiers what make or break a career. If you can't do right by your soldiers, they're not going to do right by you. And being away from soldiers it's hard because that's really who you become as a leader, who you become as a person is how well they do. If you give them the tools and the right guidance, they make your job the easiest job in the world. And then at the end of the day, it's not about you; it's about them.
I saw you put here when you're doing a S4 job working at RFI, you put down that it was a big mistake. I almost paid for that. What do you mean by that?
I didn't have any assistance, and the job was so massive that first of all, we really should never deploy with all of our equipment, of all of our gear. And at the end of the day, before my whole entire commitment was done at Fort Campbell, they tried to stick me to a huge bill of because I supposedly lost a lot of equipment, which I did not lose. So they had a huge yeah, it was a mess. So I had a huge statement that they felt that I needed to pay, and that would have meant two paychecks worth. And I fought and fought hard. I'm like, then this should. I ended up telling the CG, I'm like, I should never have done this in the first place. We should never even left until we had all our equipment. But yeah.
So they're gonna put pretty much the blame on you.
Mm-hmm.
Man, how'd you fight that?
I had to write several letters proving my innocence. I mean, because there was people not taking uniforms, they should take uniforms, or they took uniforms and never signed a statement saying they had them. So it was a lot of paperwork being shoved around, and the paperwork wasn't the best working in, Kandahar in the first place. And trying to fight that was a challenge, being back at the time I was at Fort Rucker, but trying to literally in tears, trying to figure out why they trying to do this to me when we should never even left without uniforms. Postponed at least a month. I mean, people done worse than that before going. They could have held off for a month and we got uniforms, but they were in a rush.
How long were you S4?
4 months.
And then you became Echo Company Commander?
Mm-hmm.
How honored were you when you were told you're gonna be a commander? That's a huge deal.
Especially being in aviation combat in the 101st, I was so elated. I mean, I was so glad I was in the 101st in aviation than commander of a quartermaster, because I was home. I loved what I was doing. Though I wasn't airborne, air assault qualified, and to me that doesn't matter. To me is being able to do your job successfully and being chosen to be Echo Company commander was an honor.
That's a pretty big deal.
Mm-hmm.
When you took command, did you know that you're getting deployed?
We were already deployed.
Oh, you're already deployed. So you took command in Afghanistan.
Oh yes.
Oh, that's even a bigger deal right there.
Yes.
How overwhelmed are you when you went from the S4 to being a company commander now?
I was shaking in my boots. I
I
actually
can
called up Irvin.
imagine.
I actually called Irvin. I was crying. I said, I don't know if I can do this. He said, baby, you can do it. Because I mean, it's always been a dream to be a company commander. You know, your dream is to be, you know, a first sergeant or a sergeant major, but to be a company commander, it's like it's a dream coming true for me.
Now, was he on that deployment with you as well?
High five.
Once again, I know there was a time Irv and I were talking that you guys pretty much didn't live with each other for a long time.
So, as a matter of fact, with my Iraq 15-month deployment, we were actually I was in Iraq, he was in Afghanistan at the exact same time, a few months together, but otherwise we've always had to fight with each other because they wanted us in the same brigades.
Was he always supportive?
Oh yeah, he's always been supportive. He's never been more proud of me than anybody.
I mean, you're doing big things. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
how was your first sergeant as a company commander?
I had the best first sergeant. I mean, crusty, old, mean, hateful, but he was the best. I mean, he will chew you up, spit you out, and then a minute later grab you. Let's go out back and have smoke. And he was the original first sergeant of Echo Company, and he was funny. I loved him. Loved him.
How many years were you in the Army now?
14 or 15 years, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You're a captain. You're now the commander of Echo Company. Where were you guys at in Afghanistan?
It's Camp Cole, which is tearing it out.
What was the biggest difference between Afghanistan and Iraq?
There's a huge day and night. Being in Tarrant Count, we were in the middle of nowhere, and we got mortared every night. So there was no sleeping. We got mortared all the time.
Being a company commander, how did you help your soldiers deal with combat stress and those things that they were experiencing?
I always made sure I talked to them, made sure they always had something to do. I tried to, you know, even if it's simple, you know, if you need to take a break, take a break. I didn't mind they had a break. Make sure they had something to do. It was like we had a lot of cornhole going on, horseshoes, cards, things like that. If they want to get the soccer ball around, they could soccer ball around, just activities. Just keep their mind off, you know, off on it. Stress. And then sometimes, you know, talk to first sergeant about sitting at a few to Kandahar just to get a break.
What was your primary mission there?
Primary mission was to refuel, rearm, and keep the Apaches. I was an Apache battalion, and then we also ran the John facility, and I had the motor pool, so we had to make sure all the generators safe service for fuel and water.
Damn, you had a lot going on.
I did. It was amazing. I mean, I did have third country partners we worked with, a lot of Turkish, Iranian. They mainly ran the data facility, but we assisted as needed with anything. So occasionally we'll do like a pizza night, so we'll make special pizzas.
How many people did you manage at that time?
It was 72 deployed, but at the rear it was 162.
What was your most memorable moment as a company commander in Afghanistan?
Oh, as preparing for missions, we did a lot of jump FARPs. And what jump FARPs was small group of our 3-5 platoon, which are fuelers and our ammo handlers. What we do is I would go out to outlying FOBs or OPs, mainly ran by special forces groups and whatnot, and I'd fly out to those areas to make sure the areas was big enough to suffice a fuel bladder and ammo. And a jump FARP is we would take fuel and ammo to outlying FOBs to keep the Apaches in the battle longer, because they can only fly for maybe no more than 2.5 hours if fuel is what they have, but they can only go so far out, and then they come back and refuel and rearm. So the further was able to get the fuel and the ammo out, the longer they can stay in the battle. So that was my highlight. I think I did about 9 of those. It was great. Met a lot of great people.
How did you feel being a company commander? I mean, you're a combat multiplier here. Setting up that asset for the Apaches is very significant, and just for everyone to know, I mean, you by you doing that, you keep these guys in the fight longer and get them there faster. And that's when we're talking about ticks, troops and contacts, and supporting the ground guys. That's a big thing. How did you feel as a company commander doing that?
It was great because, I mean, I was the only woman. I was the only female commander.
Damn. Let's go,
And
Joey.
yeah, and it was very, very rewarding. I mean, because I was actually doing something good and not just watching everything else happen. So it, it was really remarkable, because I actually helped them, do their job. So my job easily affected. I didn't have the right amount of fuel, didn't have the right amount of ammunition, from rockets to Hellfires to 30 mic rounds. I mean, they couldn't do their job, and the whole entire time I'm doing this, I reminded myself what it was like being, a crew chief, thinking, well, I had to keep the aircraft up and running, so I had to make sure my job was tight. It fell into place as a company commander, because now I'm affecting the aircraft again in the same way. I have to keep them running. And in the back of my mind too, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, now my husband flies these things. And I'm like, this is pretty rad. Uh, so it was like a mix of emotions, because I'm like, I'm actually doing something. I'm not just doing nothing. And it was great, because I was a non-aviator making aviation stuff happen.
You being the Echo Company commander, was that like I made it moment? Especially with the impact you're having on the battlefield, starting as a crew chief, as a private, now you're a company commander.
It's a great feeling.
That's a big deal. I mean, that's huge. The only woman running Echo Company. I mean, creating FARPs. Me being an aviator, I know how important FARPs are, especially when we need fuel. I mean, that's a big deal. And seeing you make that happen, that's very honorable. That's a huge achievement right there.
And I never thought I was able to do anything like this. But if it wasn't for the fact that I've learned from my soldiers, and that's a good takeaway as a leader. You have to learn from those doing it, because they're the ones, again, that makes your career. So by me listening to them and taking their advice, because I'm not doing the job as a commander. I'm not doing the job. They're doing the job, and I have to make sure I listen to them to make the job easy for them. And so I like I said back, okay, you tell me what you need, let's talk about it and let's make it happen. So yeah, it was a great feeling. That I was like, wow, I made it happen. And I don't, then you're like, what do I do next? What's going to happen next?
That's a big high to follow up with. With you being a company commander, you being a combat company commander, how did that shape you as a leader, the person you are, and the woman you are today, and the way you lead today?
I always go back to, it's not about you, because it's about them, and how you treat your soldiers, your people is what matters. And if you treat them with the respect, then they're going to treat you with respect and do the job and do the best job they can for you. Because again, like I keep saying, it's not about me. It's not about what I get out of it. It's what they get out of it. And I kicked a soldier out of Afghanistan once for being a knucklehead, and that's hard to do.
You sent them back home?
Kicked him out of the army too.
Damn. What did he do?
He was my smelly kid.
Ah.
And this is the first time I've ever, kind of emasculated a guy by telling me he needed to grow a pair of balls because I'm not his mom.
Yeah. Damn.
Conversation.
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes they need to hear that.
He's like 19 years old.
It hits different when it comes from a woman sometimes.
Yeah.
So, what'd you do after being company commander? How did the Army follow up with that?
They let me follow my husband to Fort Rucker, Alabama.
How'd you feel about that?
Oh, it was great because I was back with my family, my kids. It was something that I needed because, I mean, besides the FARP, we had an incident that always, will follow me when I was in Afghanistan. But just being at home with my kids and knowing that I can relax and prepare to retire was the best, honestly.
Mental health wise, how are you dealing with, because the first deployment you said was pretty chill, you didn't do much. Now you're in Afghanistan doing jump FARPs. You're a company commander. You're dealing with indirect every day. So your senses are heightened. How are you dealing with everything? How are you dealing with everything, knowing that you have all these people you have to, lead. So you have to take care of all of them. In addition, you have to take care of yourself. So how are you dealing with everything?
It's been hard for me, and I haven't let a lot of people know, especially Irv. But it's been hard because when you're a woman in an all male career, you have more male friends or acquaintances. But when you get out, you don't have that, and so the mental health for me was hard because I didn't have anybody to rely on, and when I was in Afghanistan, I was, on a day, I was doing some training for my platoon leaders, and I told them to do a bit of an op war. We're going to do a road march around the perimeter, nothing out of the ordinary. And like I do, I was back in my platoon, walking around, and I had a mortar go over my head. And when I saw that black dot in the air, I told everyone to get down. As soon as I get down, I heard the sound. So ever since that, my senses have been elevated because I dreamed that it didn't go over my head. It hit me in the head and my face blew off and whatnot. And so it was, you dream about that, you're like, it didn't happen because you're here, but it's always the what ifs. And following, talking to Irvin, there's been times where the mental health has not been on my side, and having to explain, to Irvin that sometimes I don't feel like I to be here. And I've never felt that way. I love my life, I think it hit me more is moving from Charlotte to Georgia because it's like starting my life all over again. But I chose this move for him. But, when I finally flat out told Irvin how I felt, it scared the shit out of him, literally. Because you seriously felt that way? I was like, yeah, there's a few times where I feel like I don't want to be here no more. Just completely just leave the earth. And didn't like that. And so he made sure that I had numbers to call in case I need to get a hold of him. He was not home. And I always make sure I have the right friends. People think that you're a friend, they're your friend, but they're not your friend. Ones that don't support you, don't listen to you, don't want to just be there with you are not your friends.
I agree 100%.
And my biggest thing is I've always wanted a bunch of friends, but then I realized your friends could be your enemies. Your family can be your enemies. And that hurts the worst when your family can be your enemies.
That's tough. So, what are some of the things you've done to help you out with that?
Um, Obviously, talking to my spouse, talking to Irvin, has really helped out. But finding a small, not a large, but a small group of friends that will be by your side, and making sure you get out, do things. I was one of those ones that uh, was a heavy drinker. I mean, to numb myself, and now I'm at the age where I just turned 51, and I'm very proud of myself because I don't need it no more.
I'm proud of you for that.
And I didn't go to no rehab, no nothing. I just had an epiphany going like, why am I doing this to myself? I'm a better person than this. God wants me here. My friends want me here. My kids, and my husband. Oh, by the way, I have grandbabies. I will with my grandbabies. And so I just turned my life around by like saying, I'm better than this. I don't need this. And in embedding myself with the right people, that's the key. And if you have a fallout with your family, who cares? That's life, and don't stress. Don't stress. Don't sweat it. Cause I mean, I've learned through the years where, my faith has kind of been roller coaster, and you learn through times where the Bible sometimes makes some sense, and then I'm not, again, like I said, it's a roller coaster. I believe, again, I fell in and out of my faith, but then you do find that eventually you'll realize the Bible doesn't make sense at times.
When you leave Fort Campbell, you go down to Rucker. What were you doing down at Rucker?
I was the deputy assistant G4. I worked for the G4 under the commanding general.
How many years in the Army were you?
18.
18 years. Now, was Irv getting ready to retire soon, or did you guys retire at the same time? How'd that work out?
He retired a year before I did.
Okay. So what were you doing down there down in Rucker?
So my first year, I started as a platform instructor teaching the captain's career course, or the new warrant officer, the warrant officer course and logistics. But we already had civilians that taught that, so I kind of felt like I was not being used accordingly. And then they were wanting me to teach electronic warfare. I'm like, why is a logistics officer going to teach electronic warfare? And I have no idea what it is. All you're doing is setting me up for failure. They're like, well, because you're a captain. I'm like, okay, so maybe stand in front of brand new warrant officers and look like an idiot. And he goes, yep, pretty much sums it up. I'm like, did it one time. And then after that, I walked myself up to the G1. And I'm like, do you have any positions open for a logistics officer anywhere besides the platform? He goes, oh, yeah, we need one here. That's for. I'm like, or the G4. I'm like, I'm your girl. Now I'm the only logistics officer on Fort Rucker.
Really?
And they told me that I needed to be, it should have been there in the first place. But they sent me to the schoolhouse. We already had civilian instructors.
How'd you like working G4?
I loved it. My boss was great. We all got along great. Tight group. We made things happen. We got rid of equipment. We planned, making the field farm a better facility. Just things in general. Acquisition was the tough part when we were getting rid of. I think we were getting rid of the little Kiowas for the Lakotas. That was a transition.
That your last duty station?
It was, and I asked to retire.
How long were you Fort Rucker for?
3 years.
3 years?
Mm-hmm.
I want to backtrack to Fort Campbell real quick. When you got back from your deployment, how long were you there for?
Just long enough to turn equipment in, do a change of command. So 3 months, I think, 3-4 months. Like that. So I did a total 12 months of command time.
12 months of command time, man. That's good. That's good. What's your biggest takeaway from being at Fort Campbell?
Advocate for yourself. That's the biggest thing is advocate for yourself. I mean, I did. Didn't hold no punches. And you're a lot tougher than you think you are, honestly.
I mean, you advocating yourself got you the jobs that you had. I mean, you being a company commander, that's a big deal. That's tough. That's tough. I'm glad you got to experience that. When you left Fort Campbell, did you know that it was going to be your last time being deployed, last time in Force Com?
Um, Not really. I thought I was going to do some time at Rucker and then go somewhere else. I was at the point at the time I was not looking at retirement until towards the end when the military was shifting to more of a people pleasing, army. And I'm like, so they weren't tough. So the Army's thought process is changing because I already had enough of the changes where, in basic training, I'd had students come up and show me their card, like I'm stressed card. I'm like, that's ridiculous. What are you stressed about? You're in garrison.
At what moment did you realize and you and Irv had that talk that it was time for you to get out?
When the Army was holding, we wanted to promote Irvin to W4, which we really wanted that to happen. But again, the way that the Army was changing, he didn't like a change, and that he knew if by taking 4, he would have had another deployment, and we already had enough being gone. Because we got married in 04, and since then it was like we weren't really together a whole lot through our first 8 years of marriage because we were, either he was gone or I was gone and vice versa. So Rucker was like the longest we've actually been home together at one time.
How do you guys think you made it through that? Because a lot of people wouldn't have been able to make that. But you guys, both in the military, you guys are away from each other a lot. How'd you guys keep it together?
The communication, and I think what helped is that I was in and I understood the mission. Because I mean, even being in and as a wife, I still fret because there was times when Irv would call and was telling me about something, and I'm like, oh God, seriously this happened to you? And he goes, oh yeah, not act like it was a big deal, but it happened. And I had then like reality set in. I was like, oh my God, I could have lost my husband today, whatever, and then when he finally come home, he would show me pictures of things. I'm going, this really happened? He goes, yeah, it really happened, and then he would tell me funny stories. And I'm like, so I took my time being in. It's like, man, yours was more stressful than mine was, so it's like, but he always, I took, when we have conversations about that, I'm like, I feel like I never accomplished a whole lot like he did. So I always like undermine what I've always done. And so I'm like, so our communication.
Crazy thing is he'd probably say the same thing about you, that you accomplished more than he has. And he's very nonchalant about stuff. I'm like, Irv, come on, bro, that's a big deal. Nah, Jay.
He's done so much that people don't imagine he's done because he's that modest. And I'm an open book, but I haven't done half the stuff that you and Matt and Jason and Justin and he's done, like being yellow pilots. Y'all saw a lot more and done a lot more shit.
You've done a lot though. You're a company commander, so that's significant. How'd you feel when you were about to retire from the Army and you were wrapping up this huge part of your life?
I was ready, but I wasn't ready. But I needed to be ready because I needed more time with my kids. And then I realized my kids were grown up. So I missed out on a lot of my kids' life by being in and wanting to spend time with them. I wanted and I needed, but never got. Because Susan, the oldest, when I came back, she was in high school. I think a sophomore in high school, and by the time I actually finally retired, she was graduating high school. And the only one I had left to do raise anything was Lauren, who was in junior high. But yeah, that was tough when to be able to spend time with their kids and then realizing they're too grown up for you to able to raise.
Mm-hmm. They grow up fast.
Oh, they do.
They grow up so fast. It's crazy. What did you do when you retired from the Army? What'd you decide as a career?
Uh, that was hard. That was very, very challenging for me. Because being logistics, there's logistics everywhere in the world. But Irvin moved us to Texas, to the border. Um, flying, drug addiction and human trafficking. I tried to get jobs down there in the warehouses because huge import export there in Laredo. But I was qualified, but I couldn't speak Spanish. So that disqualified me for a lot of jobs. And by that, I went through a lot of depression. Just, I was miserable. I couldn't work. Um, and he had buddies that he worked with at the agency tell me I couldn't be friends with people because not knowing if they had ties to the cartel. Well, I mean, they filled my head with a bunch of shit. And and so it was hard on me as it is because I've been around the block once or twice, Afghanistan, Iraq. So, but I also know not everybody's bad. You go to Iraq, working with those Iraqis that came on base to clean and do stuff. They're all the same mindset as we are. They have a family oriented. They want to take care of their family. Same thing as Afghanistan. Not everyone's bad. People want to be left alone. And for them to do that to me, I didn't like it. So I was anxious. I had with the bad anxiety. I was depressed, and then so that's when my drinking really started to really get out of hand. To the point where I told Irvin, I'm gonna move back to Fort Rucker, Alabama, to our house. You stay here and do your work. And at that point, he was like, "Nope, we're not gonna do it. We're not gonna separate no more." I says, "I'm tired of being away from you. We've done enough. It's we're gonna do this together." So I'm like, "So fine." And we literally built a house from scratch. Lived in 8 months. Built a house 8 months, and he resigned his job, and that's where we moved to South Carolina. And I just went to school to be a dental assistant. Kind of did that, kind of get myself back in the game. Still having a hard time trying to get logistics jobs because I guess I was too overly qualified. That would pay me. Um, then moved from Myrtle Beach to closer to Charlotte, and that's where I started getting to some better jobs. Where I kind of felt my worth. But then again, it's the hours. Like, I'm done with these hours. It's all about your work-life balance still today. And working for TSA was a great, rewarding job. Had fun, loved doing it. All of us had some form of military backgrounds. It was a very, very tight knit group. But again, didn't have a life because it was from like 12 in the afternoon to midnight. So I wasn't able to spend time at home with the new neighbors and whatnot. Because a good year, everyone thought everyone was faking that he had a wife. So I gave up that job, worked for a trash company, again, same hours, heck of a lot more pay. Did that, couldn't handle that job. And so kind of dabbled in that. And then I got certified in doing some IT work. Loved doing that, had better hours. Actually moving around, talking to, different people. So I started to feel a little bit better about myself. Until after 2 years of doing it, I'm like, it's time for me to work full time, no more contract work, and they wouldn't do it. And so I'm like, I gave them the big finger and like pound sand, and then so yeah.
How that had to be a tough transition because I dealt with that. I'm dealing with that now, trying to look, dabble in, but I realized that I don't want to work for anybody, and I'm just probably gonna just keep being an entrepreneur and because it is tough. I can agree with you. It's tough that you leave the Army being a decorated soldier, combat veteran, you serving, doing all these great things. Then you get to the civilian world and you literally start all over. It's
Well, I feel what it is though companies have that blur on their on their contracts that the veteran's preference. And all that is, if they hire a veteran, they get a tax break for that person. But you have other veterans ahead of us that makes it hard because other veterans feel like they're overly entitled to some things and really we're not. We're still a person as well. We're no better than anybody else. The difference is we deploy, we gave our time to the country. All of us are messed up in some form or fashion, but don't ruin it for the rest of us. And that's, I feel what's happening is these companies are finding out, oh, you this, they're going to back off because, some people are worse off than others. And I get that, but but you're not overly entitled. And that's the problem that gets me, is you're not overly entitled. Because you get for a speeding ticket, don't pull your a veteran. You're the one that's speeding. The veteran you didn't speed. You as a person did speeding.
Yeah. If I'm speeding, I'm just taking it. I agree with you. I'm at a point in life now that even if I were to apply for a job, I don't even check the block that I'm a veteran anymore. I don't do any of that. I agree with you. I think there's a stigma out there, but it's due to veterans over entitled. Some veterans, not all of them, okay, but some veterans are over entitled, and it does make it harder for the other ones out there that are not looking for those things. But once again, people are people. Everybody's different. We can't categorize all groups. There's exceptions to everything. So how are you feeling now, mental health wise?
I have my moments. I do. Again, the stop drinking really helped me, give me a lot more clarity. I do work from home, and so which is nice. So I'm in a field that I've been doing it for almost 3 years now. And I'm working because I want to work because I get bored. I literally don't have to work because my husband makes plenty of money. Based on my retirement and my disability, I bring in my own money too. But I'm only working because right now I'm bored, and so working from home and gives me some good clarity. Not being around the people, but I also miss people, but also to realize that I have to make sure I'm around the right group of people. Because some people don't care what's going on. You have some have empathy and some that don't have empathy.
Yeah, I think that's huge too. You got to be very careful who you surround yourself with. I've been told a lot, and you probably can relate. We have these walls up around us, right? It's hard to let people in because it's just hard. It's very hard.
Yeah, I live in an airport, so the people here are a lot older, or they have some that are younger, and some of the women that live here are pilots, and then they find out that you're not a pilot, they look down upon you because you're not a pilot, and so it's just a lot of and Irvin and I are like one of 3 families that are actually Army. Everybody else is Air Force. So, so we don't relate to the jet world because we're helicopters. So
We're better anyways as helicopter guys. Justin was telling me a story about when he started flying for commercial airlines. All the fixed wing guys would look at the helicopter guys like we're wizards or something. He's like, "Man, helicopter pilots, you guys are so cool." So I thought that was funny. What advice would you give a young soldier, a young person, an older person, anybody dealing with mental health right now?
it is okay not to be okay because we're all wired differently. We all have different ways we handle things. So it's okay to be not okay.
That is very true. First off, we have to figure out what okay is, right? So such a subjective thing.
It is. So, I mean, because, some things affect you differently than others. So, as I'm saying, we're all wired differently. We all have different ways of handling things and doing things. So, I mean, So everyone's situations are different and handle things differently. So it's okay not to be okay.
What was your happiest moment in your military career?
Being that combat company commander was the happiest. I just, I that it's just, I felt part of something we accomplished, something we did. So I loved my time being an instructor for AIT on the enlisted side because that's impacting the future. But those are the best times. Was those two.
What was your, if you have one, what was one of your biggest regrets in the military or in life?
Though it's not a regret, but it's really, well, it's a regret. It's really leaving my kids with other adults when I should have found other means. Sometimes family can be your worst enemy, and though at the time I had all I had was my family. Maybe I should have found sometimes other means besides family. But I really was really just regret leaving my kids. It's a big thing.
How do your daughters feel about you being gone so much? How do they feel now that they're adults? Because it's a question I asked my adult children too. I said, "Hey, you guys, were you guys ever mad at me?" And they said, "No, Dad. We understood what you were doing and what was going on, so we're never mad." But how did your daughters deal with it? And
They handled it better than I thought they would. I know the oldest one, her and I, well, she and I, after I got back and had a really rough patch. After she graduated, then I got worse. And so we didn't speak for a few years. But I understood. But through the years we started talking, and now we're great. We talk every day. And then the youngest one, she's struggling in life in general because she's still trying to figure out what it's like how to be an adult. She's 26, and when your kids grow up, when mom and dad are gone, they always see you as the person in charge. They've never seen what was like us being on the bottom working right up. They never saw mom, buffing floors, cleaning toilets, dusting this, painting rocks, mowing grass, doing things like that. They always saw us, mom and dad in charge. So she's is mad because she's struggling. And I'm trying to tell her, babe, that's not how life works. Well, you did it. You did it. I'm like, well, that's not what mom did, actually. I did. And did this and this and this. And she doesn't get it. So she's mad at me in that aspect because she just doesn't have the opportunity to have that life skill, that she needed.
I think you and her will get her, keep her on track, keep guiding and mentoring her. Our children, I've realized with our adult children, we just have to sit back and let them live life. Then with mine, they want to figure things out on their own, and I'm okay with that as a dad. If you need me, you got my number. If you don't, still check on me once in a while, so
That's what the reality of Irvin and I have done. We don't meddle in our kids' affairs. If they have questions, they call us. We give them our opinion. And we're like, it's our opinion. Take it or don't take it. Use it or don't use it. That's your choice. And whatever you do, we're not going to be mad. But then when you get other family members that are always meddling and telling them what they need to do, that's got to stop because they're our children. We don't tell them what to do. They're old enough. They're adults. They still need to figure out life on their own. Let them make mistakes. Let them learn from the mistakes. But when they get caught or stuck, they come to us. And so that's part of my regret is because leaving them with other family, and it was hard because they feel like now they're the parent, not I, and that's how it is. And they would tell anybody and their brother that we're the one that raised kids, but they're my children. Yeah.
it's crazy how people tell stories nowadays. It's very, very interesting. I would say that. What's the key lesson or takeaway you want listeners to get from your story?
don't be afraid. You know, don't be afraid to lead. Don't be afraid to explore different things, to see things through different eyes, because once you get away, you see things differently than where you're at right now. And by me leaving my small town, I see things a lot clearer now than I did growing up. And that's actually a good thing, because then you have your own opinion, you have your own thought process, and so it's yours, not everybody else's. And if anybody is looking to thinking about joining, and I tell people, though the military is not for everybody, it has something for everybody in it.
That's deep. That's real good. That's a nugget right there. What legacy do you want to leave behind for your daughters, your grandchildren?
That mom was not afraid. They think I was.
You've done some pretty bold things in life. Some very honorable things. That's huge. Very, very important. What's the one thing you tell a younger self?
To listen to the older people ahead of you. They know what they're talking about. So be level-headed.
I agree with you on that. I look back. I agree with you. I look back when I was in my 20s, early 30s, and I didn't listen to the older people. Now that I'm in my 40s, when the older people talk, I'm taking notes, and I'm trying to figure out what can I do to take their advice and their wisdom and get me, like I said earlier, further along. 3 words to describe yourself.
Honest, empathetic. That's all I have right now.
What about a fun fact about yourself that a lot of people don't know?
I was learning how to fly.
You're learning how to fly?
I was, yes. I had 100 hours.
Let's go. Any final thoughts?
Well, just don't be afraid. If life throws you lemons, make lemonade out of it. It's okay, Just don't be afraid.
You got any big projects going on or anything?
No, just trying to make the house that Irvin and I live in a better place to live.
There you go. Day at a time. Just
one day at a time.
You know the deal. If you make your situation just a little bit better today than it was yesterday, you're making progress, and that's a good thing. And I want to share with you, I appreciate your time today. It was great having you on. I learned a lot about you. I didn't know that you've done some of them cool things, and you're a pivotal part on the battlefield. I think a lot of people, this is why I created Heroes Have Wings. I think a lot of people need to know about the unsung heroes on the battlefield. It's not just the pilots. It's just not the special forces guys. It's just not the infantry guys, the combat arms job. There's a lot of stuff, like you said earlier. There's a lot of stuff moving behind the scenes that a lot of people aren't aware of, and you guys don't get credit. And just knowing that you ran FARPs in a combat zone, I mean, that's tough. That is tough. And I don't think people understand how logistically tough that is, right? Just moving the stuff, and now you're doing it in the battlefield is tough. And I want to let you know you are a hero. I'm proud of you.
Stay soon.
Keep working on yourself. Life is a confusing journey. But I've learned at 40, well, I'm 45 now, but I started learning about 3-4 years ago that you live your life the way you want to live it as long as you're happy. All right. It's, I think of mortality a lot just because we've been in the Army, we've dealt with death, we've been in combat. And the harsh reality is 60 days after I leave this world, a lot of people won't even remember me. My family will. And this is why I live the life I live. And just hearing your story, you're a testament of that. You've done all the things you wanted to do. You've been in a lot of hard places. You've battled a lot of obstacles, but you never used it as an excuse, and you just always made it happen. And I'm proud of you for that. I know Irv's proud of you for it, and just keep kicking ass. You're doing great. You're doing great. So in closing, stay bold, stay fearless, resilience wins battles, and stories shapes legacies. This is why we continue to tell stories here on Heroes Have Wings. because I want the world to know who you are and all the other people that have been on the show, who they are. I'm your host, Jason Santiago. This is my great friend, Joie Bier. Appreciate you. I'm gonna keep asking, please share, like, subscribe. Let's keep spreading the word, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you for tuning in to Heroes Have Wings, where we honor the extraordinary stories of grit, sacrifice, and resilience. Remember, every hero's journey starts with a single step, so take yours today. If you love this episode, like, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, keep pushing limits, breaking barriers, and living your truth. I'm your host, Jason Santiago, and this is Heroes Have Wings, where legends rise.